We will begin with the opening prayers.
Dame dembe de bagayin ba chungling wenye de prasejene yanda sula nye be du shuji tenla nye brazo de sovande chedan raji kana ma de chedan dambe cheso jebana Vindra Shiri Gyuba Nisene Tunsan Lishe Domdir Sovande Dedan Dengi Duma Tamji Bayon Singi Shile Chonsen Tome Meba Kombe Pichon Tebe Pare Sendir Sovande Sende Chanjuro Yembe Se Samembra Nina Dote Cielo Seba Cheve Namdaraji Kume Jemba Dendir Sovande Chambe Loji Niji Donjo Tandrawa Meba Ngijo Nambrata Tome Gyoda Jelada Gyoshi Meda Ngebra Sindri Sova Nyemonye Lo Giji Medon Shi Kati Shaya Nibu Chelenchi Kewe Nganzu Sambo Medon Vi Shinyin Penze Gandri Sovan So Sora Dena Nyamja Shiraki Shiro Jesu Jubra Misheba Ngedin Tambra Jete Sovan Chimbro Chala Zishi Jishi Loi Mena Daba Nanji Sanjirane Gela Jove Lodre Givedi Nyosong Ora Zede Sovan Tedra Yende Jele Gando Yende Jebe Chashi Jebe Listen Dede Bagama Baye Gomba Zonji Sho Ho Sangye Jedan Soye Shonam Lo Chancho Bando Dane Yesus Tage Junye Gibe Sanam Ye Rola Ben Sangye Rubra Jo Sangye Jedan Soye Shonam Chancho Bando Dane Yesus Tage Junye Gibe Sanam Ye Rola Ben Sangye Rubra Jo Sangye Jedan Soye Shonam Chancho Bado Dane Gyozo Dagi Jinye Gibe Sanam Ge Rola Ben Sangye Robra Jo Chanze Wanan Chije Shabbat Jeso Yera Gujin Sewa Gewa Jose Dagi Jizaba Tamje Dang Chanju Jemo Sashi Buji Joji Mendo Rira Venishi Ninde Gemba Sangye Jindo Mede Buwai Droge Nanda Jinla Jebra Jo Senje Namye Samba Loye Jera Jida Shizhon de mon de baye chege golo golo so.
And can you all hear me?
지제가라 여름경 연세베 던주제는 뭐 예외대 먹고는 선서바 여름버 잘라서 빠데 도저로 근소 라마가마바 기므로 근주는 시베 이담네 마트려 근제 셔로 완주 쉬어 베는 점들 네 주주요 그변도 잡에 도지 경원한 저 시제주는 남자도에게 서로 오늘 랭닝바 대주제라는 이거를 메기도 제셔로 장저로 빠데서 라마르 무제 다저 오르면 되셔라 그런 심에 관한 지선 우선도 영어로 자도 올라서 다들 도마
So, first of all, today, I would like to offer you all my warm greetings. And today, to begin with, I would like to speak about the autobiographical verses Good Deeds by Mikyo Dorje, in the topic of how he practiced the path of the greater individual. This topic, the how he practiced the path of the greater individual, has 3 sections. And the first of these, and best if I show it to you,
다데라 아니 기부 충격이 람 통념스도 주다 아니 기부 링게 람 통념스도 주 아니 기부 신비
so
람
there are the 3 main parts: how he practiced the path of the lesser individual, how he practiced the path of the middling individual, and how he practiced the path of the greater individual. These are the 3 topics that we have already discussed. And so the third, how he practiced the path of the greater individual, has, in terms of its subtopics, has 3 parts: how the intention rousing bodhicitta, the taking adversity as the path and potent meditation, and how he trained in the precepts of the 2 types of bodhicitta. So there are these 3 different topics here, subtopics. And so today, the one we are discussing today is the first of these 3, the intention rousing bodhicitta. And the root text of rousing bodhicitta is, all beings without distinction are the same as my parents. It is illogical to group them into factions of friend or foe. With uncontrived love for beings in intolerable states, I thought, when can I bring them the benefit of true enlightenment? I think of this as one of my good deeds. So that is the verse. Now, this verse and the 5th stanza of the Praise He Searched Thoroughly are similar in meaning. So I thought it was also good to speak about the 5th stanza of the Praise He Searched Thoroughly. So in terms of its topic, the 5th stanza of the Praise He Searched Thoroughly is transcendent generosity, loving kindness, and so forth, and transcendent diligence of non-attachment, and so forth, according to the 5th Shama or Kuncha Yonlak. The verse reads, his mind never free from love and pangs of compassion, his wish for emancipation was utterly pure. He always despaired of suffering and its causes and pondered impermanence. To him I pray. Now, I've already discussed this verse one time in connection with the preliminaries of entering the Dharma. However, the outline by the fifth Shamar and Palazzo Chengwa's Feast for the Scholars explain this as teaching, training in the mind in bodhicitta, the essence of Mahayana. And so, if we don't want to explain this in accord with those texts, then I think it is also, I think, very good to speak about this in relation to the practice of the great individuals. So I will explain it again.
라소 따텔래야 따마시 야게지기랑 디지스는 가서를 삼탄
Perhaps it's actually better if you can see this at the same time.
라소 단 디지기랑 디지스 시기시기래 응엘지 쉐르 자가시나
Now you can look at the text as I give the explanation. Now, the explanation given, Mikyu Dorji gives in his instructions in training and the liberation story, the advice that Mikyu Dorji gives his students is instead of reading every word of that text, but to express the main points. As has already been explained, the afflictions such as the view of self are discarded through the prajna that realizes selflessness, and so we should try as hard to discard them. And even if a few individual sentient beings are liberated from samsara, but since there are limitless sentient beings, we are still obscured by the afflictions, such as the view of the self and the afflicted and unobscured obscurations. And so, for example, there are many sentient beings who are really quite far from the state of perfect Buddhahood, the state of the highest permanent happiness. And so for that reason, it is extremely important that all sentient beings throughout space, it's very important that they all achieve Buddhahood. It doesn't really help much if just a few, one or two here or there, achieve the state of Buddhahood. And to achieve such a state of Buddhahood, to achieve Buddhahood, or the state of nirvana that does not fall into either extreme of samsara or of becoming or peace. So if all sentient beings out throughout space have no guide, and so we should even have so we should have compassion for even the noble arhats who have passed into nirvana, because they have not, in comparison to the Mahayana, they have not achieved this complete enlightenment. And so we should have the wish to seek to bring them to the state of the nirvana that does not dwell in either existence or peace. And so that state of arhatship is something that dwells in peace, is something that we also need to give up and transcend. And so it's unnecessary to mention that all the riches and bounty of this life is also something we must give up. And so if we have the true wish to achieve the Buddhahood, or the state of nirvana beyond existence and peace, then we have no wish at all to become We have no wish at all to become someone who's known as great in this world or to be wealthy with the riches of this life. We don't even have the slightest hope to do this. And so for that reason, when we see that some lamas' teachings flourish and their activity flourish, and when they become well known, we aren't even envious of that, because if we don't have any wish for that, then there's no envy, is there? If it's other than that, there are people these days who say that they are bodhisattva and say that they wish to achieve the nirvana beyond existence and peace. There are many who say this, but what they're thinking in the middle of in their hearts is the teachings of another lineage, of another Dharma tradition flourishes. They think to themselves, that's harming our teachings. And they get very worried about this. And they have a real pangs of pain over this. And they think, what can we do so that our teachings can spread? They worry about this. And they try to do whatever they can to make their own teachings flourish and to harm the other teachings. And this is what they make into their primary practice, their primary continually practice. But this is actually completely contradictory of the actions of the ways of the Bodhisattva. And so for that reason, we shouldn't be satisfied with just a few sentient beings achieving the state of Buddhahood. All sentient beings in order to bring all sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood, we think, I'm going to bring them to there. I'm going to strive for that. We need to devote ourselves to this. So we should feel, and we should try to do as much as we can to develop unbearable compassion for them in our beings. And if we can do that, then saying we rouse bodhicitta is no longer just mere words, but it is actually something we can put into practice. Now, I'll speak about this in more detail tomorrow, so I won't speak much now. I think the connection for the Bogar has probably been lost, so I don't see them. Now, next, what I would like to speak about the other day, I gave a brief an overall description of how the origin of the Great Encampment in connection with the fourth Karmapa Rinpoche Dorje. And in connection with that, I also spoke a bit about the main sacred object, the gondola. So today I would like to continue speaking about the gondola, how it first appeared, its shape and design, and also what happened or where it went after the destruction of the Great Encampment. So I thought I would explain these more clearly and give additional material today. When we talk about the gondola, now, as I mentioned the other day, there are liberation stories written by Kama Kunshu and Surpa Kunpangwa and Shama Kantra Wangpa and so forth. These are the liberation stories written by the by the direct disciples of Rinpoche Dorje. There's also the Red Annals of Tselpa. Which was, and now the Tselpa's Red Annals was probably written in the year that Rinpoche Dorje went to China. So the liberation stories written by the people of that time I don't even mention the word gondola. The name gondola does not appear. The earliest account of the gondola that I have seen is in the liberation story of the seventh Karmapa, written by Comrade Goshri, Goshri Paljajunab. Now, this is the ones that I have seen. Now, this is what I'm saying. Now, I cited this yesterday, but it says the supreme support for the meditation of the successive incarnations of the bear, the black ram, the emanations of the sixth Buddha, the lion's roar. And so this is what it says there. Now, if we look at the way Goshri wrote this, we can understand clearly that a few incarnations had passed since the appearance of the gondola. So why isn't such an important point, such as why the important point as the appearance of the gondola not written and not mentioned in the liberation stories written in the Karmapa Storje's direct disciples? Now, this is events from hundreds of years ago, 600 years ago. So I can't give a precise answer, that exact answer, but to hazard a guess. I think that the situation must be connected to the manner in which the gondola first came into Rilpe Dorje's possession. I think it's related to that. So I said the other day, I recently received an old manuscript, the catalog of the gondola, written by the fifth Shamar Kunchul Yanlak. And I received two different manuscripts of this. They're handwritten manuscripts, and what they say is, it describes the material of the gondola, what material it was made out of, its form or design, and who the maker was, and how the story of how the gondola came into the Karmapa possession. And it describes this all clearly. However, something that's really disappointing is in both of these handwritten manuscripts, the scribes who wrote down the manuscript omitted the passages describing who made the gondola and how it came into the Karma's possession. It's like they missed a page. And they just forgot to write it. They just left it at it. They just jumped from one point to the next. They just skipped over it. And so, until I could get another manuscript of this catalog of the gondola written by the fifth Shamar Kunchul Yanlak, there's probably no way we can really know about who the maker of the gondola was or how they came into how the gondola came into the Karmapa. If the scribes were here, we'd have to really, we'd have to chew them out. We'd have to say, why didn't you write this passage about why this happened? But they're not here and they've passed away. So what can we do? But one actually thing that works out for us is that there is a text called The History of Kaju Monasteries, written by Karma Khenchen Rinchen Dargye, in which he writes clearly about how the gondola came into the Karmapa's possession. Now, instead of reading this passage, I'm just going to explain the meaning. Now, generally, at Karma Monastery, was overseen by the lineage of nephews of Karma Pakshi. So Karma Pakshi's nephew, then that nephew's nephew, and that nephew's nephew. So they oversaw the Karma monastery. And it was when they were overseeing the monastery that so many so the many so there are many Siddhas who were born in the in the lineage of the nephews of Karma Pakshi who oversaw this Karma monastery. So one of them was called Siddha Aryappa. This is a different sutta than the one who is in our one of our heartsons, the Thai sutta. So this is a different sutta, the Sutta Aryappa. And so during the time that when he was overseeing the Karma monastery, Lord Robert Dorje had been invited by the Emperor Tolkien Timur to the Mongolia, and on the way there, he came to Karma Monastery. When he arrived at Karma Monastery, at that time, Ropa Dorje taught the 6 yogas, and after that, there were many retreatants practicing the 6 yogas. And so the areas around Karma Monastery were filled with retreatants doing the 6 yogas. And Karma Papa himself then continued on his way to China. And Sutta Aryappa went to a place near Karma Monastery called Gang Monastery and sat in a retreat there. And 7 acharyas, so Indian acharyas. So these days we say acharya, but in Tibetan, they call, when we say acharya, when Tibetans saw Indians, they saw their big hairs and big noses and have really strange-looking faces and long eyelashes. When we said acharya, it's like something that people would laugh at. Actually, the acharya is what we call acharyas these days. And so the 7 acharyas came to Karma Monastery. And so we need to see Karma Guru. We need to meet the one Karma Guru. We've come to see him. And so these 7 acharyas came. And when the 7 acharyas came, the Karma had gone to China. Siddha Aryappa was in retreat. And so there was an attendant. So they met an attendant. And what the attendant said is that the Karma Guru has gone to China. And so that's what he said. And the Acharya said, is there a Lama we can meet? Can we meet your Guru? And he said, our Guru is in retreat. If you wait a moment, I can go ask him. He said. And when he said that, when the Acharya said, you don't need to ask him. You don't need to ask the Guru. We'll go to see a Karma Guru. That means it's a Karmapa, right? We will go to meet the Karma Guru and to see Wutai Mountain in China. And so until that time, we have this parcel or a box. So the parcel, we could say a box these days. And so we're going to entrust this to your Guru. And then when the 7 of us return to this monastery, then please give it back to us. No, you don't need to until we all come. If just 1 or 2 of us comes, don't give it to us. But when all 7 of us have returned to the monastery, then please give it to us. But until that time, until we are all here, please, you take care of it. And so the attendant said, oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, of course. And so he to go, so I'll tell the guru. And he took the box and he went off to give it to the, he went to the guru. And when he said that, then the guru said, Siddhartha said, I said, you should send them out. It's not right that you didn't send them. That you didn't send the seven acharyas. So immediately go and get them, bring them to me. Now the outsiders, when he went to see them, when he went out to see them, then the acharyas had disappeared without a trace. No one knew where they had gone. And so what they started. So what they said at the time was they're emanations. They were emanations of the Karmapa, they said. So he had emanated through his miraculous powers and gone to Dalsha cave, opened up that sacred place, and taken out the gondola. And so it's kind of like he had revealed a treasure at this Tao Shell cave, and he went there and he had taken out, had removed the emanations had taken it out, and they were giving it to the karma, but they were like emanations. They weren't actual. It's not like they were real acharyas who came from India. So this is a way of explaining it. That was later became very common. Now that parcel was brought and put on a shrine, and they were wondering when are the acharyas coming. They kept it. They kept it. But they waited for a long time, but they heard nothing of the seven acharyas, and not even one of them came. Later, when the fourth Karmapa Rinpoche Dorje was returning from China, and he stopped at Karma Monastery on the way, he asked Suta Aryapa, did you get a parcel from seven acharyas, or a box from the seven acharyas? When he asked that, then Siddhartha said, they gave it to me. And he gave that box, the parcel that had been given by the seven acharyas to the Karmapa. And at that point, they opened up the box, and at that point, and there was the sacred object of the gondola, and also a letter describing its history. And so that is what happened. And so Karmapa Rinpoche Dorje then made offerings to it, and that became the gondola sacred object. So that was what it says. And so this is these are in a text by the Karma Kenshin Rinpoche Dorje, and if we look at how it is written, it is not how we thought it was the other day. It wasn't actually directly offered to Rinpoche Dorje. Instead, it was that after Rinpoche Dorje had departed Karma Monastery for the China, the Indian acharyas arrived in Karma Monastery, and then through an attendant, they entrusted it with Sita Aryapa. And since it was in a parcel or box, they couldn't open it because they had said they were going to come back. And they said, we're going to come and get it later. So thinking that they would come back, they didn't open it. Later, when Rinpoche Dorje was returning from China, through his clairvoyance, or because they were his emanations, if they're his emanations, he'd know, right? In any case, he said, did some acharyas address a package to you? And then only then did they open up the package and found the gondola inside of it. And so I think for this reason, so I think that this is probably the reason why the liberation stories by his direct disciples did not describe how Karmapa Rinpoche Dorje was offered the gondola. The reason they don't describe that is that the gondola was not offered directly to Karmapa Rinpoche Dorje. Now, the source material Karma Kenshin Rinpoche Dorje used to write this history was that he probably saw a complete manuscript of the fifth Shamapa's catalog of the Gondola, or some other old manuscript. In any case, I think that his text is the clearest account of the origin of the gondola that I've found. Now, it's also another account similar to his is in the Golden Garland of Kaji biographies compiled by Senja Penchen and Sir Mansei Wang, and describing the history of Karbe Monastery. It says, 7 emanated acharyas offered the gondola to Siddha Aryapad at Suttam Jansen, the son of Adir, who had taken the responsibility for the Karma monastery. So that's what it says there. And so I think these two fit together well, or they agree with each other. And so I was unable to describe how the origin of the gondola clearly yesterday, and so for that reason I've tried to explain it more clearly today. Now the second point is the shape or design of the gondola, and I thought I should explain that. Now the other day I showed you an image from the lineage Tankas kept at Palpang Monastery, and that showed 5 acharyas. And it had like an image, a drawing of the 5 acharyas offering the gondola to the Mahabodhi temple. I showed this to you, right? Now maybe if I show it to you again. Now, where did it go? Oh, here it is. So I think you can see better if you look at it again. Now, please look at this. So the lineage Tanka is kept at the Palpang Monastery, and among them, and so this has a drawing of an image of the 5 acharyas holding the things. And now what they're holding is kind of like the shape of the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, right? So the shape is the same as the Mahabodhi temple, right? So because I saw this, because of seeing this image, I thought that the gondola must have been the same shape as the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya. And so for many years, I got kind of confused by this, and thinking it had to be something like the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya. And then once I was reading a liberation story of the 9th Karmapa, and there it says the Jowo gondola. And because it wrote Jowo gondola, then only then did I realize, because it said the word Jowo, which is a meat word for Buddha, that it must be a statue of the Buddha. But at that time, I hadn't seen any text that described the gondola in detail. So I didn't understand it clearly, but I went through detailed searches of various historical documents, and as I did so, I began to get a clearer picture of what the gondola looked like. And so, the first thing I understood was the sacred object was a statue of the Buddha. Now, what is the reason why the statue of the Buddha is called the gondola? Is because it's an image of the Buddha sitting inside a temple. And temples where the Buddha stayed are, as I mentioned the other day, are called Gandalaya or Gandakuti, or if you say it to translate, it says temples with a pure fragrance, or monasteries with a pure fragrance. And so for that reason, so images or statues of this type that show the Buddha inside an image are probably called by the term Gandalaya. Similarly, Goshe Paldadunda's liberation story, the seventh Karmapa, says that the gondola was made of material, the material it was made from was wood of the Bodhi tree. And that it depicted the Buddha in a temple, so that is a temple within a monastery, a temple. And so that it also had that it also was carved with images of the deeds of the Buddha. And so when I looked at that, when I look at that liberation story of the seventh Karmapa, I think it's similar to what I showed you the other day. The sacred object that is kept at Rumtek Monastery. And the reason is because the Buddha is in the center, and then around it is like the shape of a fragrant temple. And then it's on either side there, below it's on the top, there's the image of the Buddha passing to nirvana, and other deeds of the Buddha to the sides. Now, now what it says about the design of this temple in the fifth Karmapa's catalog is that the temple is based on the Gandalaya temple in Bodh Gaya. However, it is not a depiction of the entire Gandalaya or Mahabodhi temple in Timbuktu. So when we say that, when we hear that, we think it should be like the complete Bodhi temple or Gandalaya, but it's not like that actually. It's like if someone's staying by the door, and when you're looking in and seeing the Buddha statue, and at that time, you see the outer door, and you see the door and the Buddha inside, but you can't see the entire outside. And so it's taken with that as an example. In any case, when you say the Jowo gondola, the reason why we say Jowo is that there are the words Jowo and Jomo. And so in the old days, Tibetans would use these as honorific words for the deity or the people, or the honorific or affectionate terms for people who can offer one protection or refuge. For example, the two Buddha statues in the temple in Lhasa and at the Ramoche temple, and they're called the Jo Shakyamunis, or the Jowo. And so it's similar to that. And so for that reason, the gondola is, as I have described, it is not necessarily shaped like the Mahabodhi temple as shown in the gondola. Instead, it has the Buddha statue in the middle, and then outside it has the Gandala, or the fragrant temple, with various different designs in it. So that is various different carvings, and so that is what it must be like. And so that is a description of the design or the shape of that And so I've now described that. Then after that, when the encampment had destroyed, where did the sacred object end up? To discuss this, I didn't explain this terribly clearly the other day. So now, generally, during the time of the 10th Karmapa, Chön Dorje, the Mongol Gushi Khan first destroyed the encampment. And during that time, he's killed many people and injured many people. In particular, Gushi Khan and the fifth Dalai Lama steward, Sonam Damten, went together to Tsehlagang in Kongpo. And we say there's the Black Treasury. So the Black Treasury was the place where all of the sacred objects and treasures and artifacts of the Karmapas were kept. This Black Treasury was first at Surpo. Then later, during the time of the sixth Karmapa, Kushri Dundrup took all of the sacred objects and artifacts in the Black Treasury from Tsurpu down to Kongpo and put them in the Tsehlagang Monastery there. And so the Tsurpu Black Treasury was moved down to Kongpo, and so the main treasury was kept in Kongpo. Now the Zunak, when we talk about it, if we think about it these days, it's like there's something like this in Japan, at Nara City in Japan. And there's the Todaiji temple in Nara City. And in this Todaiji temple, there is a treasury called the Shosoin. And this is a treasury that was made in the 8th century. And it's a really famous treasury. And in particular, there are many artifacts from the Tang Dynasty. So it's really famous. So it's like that. So when you talk about the Black Treasury, that is what it is. So if I think I show you what that treasury was like, then I think you can probably think, oh, whoa, this must be what the treasury was like. So this is it. So this is the treasury in Japan. If you look at it on the outside, it's like an ordinary building. But if you look inside, there are really incredibly many thousands of sacred of historical artifacts. So there was a treasury similar like this. They had like a separate treasury kept there. And so for that reason, at that time, Goshi Khan and Chanze Sunamraten went together to Kombo Tsehlagang and Kompo. And they raided the Black Treasury and seized all of the sacred objects and cultural objects of the Great Encampment that were kept in the Black Treasury. For example, the shrine where the gondola was kept, there were 6 statues of the 16 arhats made of aloe wood that had been given to Karmapa Rinpoche Doje by the Ming Emperor Yongle. And these were taken at that time. They take these off to Drepung. But while they're taking them on the way, the statues of the 4 great kings and the Hashang, they were careless with them and they fell into the Brahmaputra River. And so those were lost. But everything else was brought to Drepung Monastery. And you can still see these 16 arhats to this day at Drepung Monastery. And so this is described very clearly in the great 5th Dalai Lama's autobiography. So it's a very tumultuous time, and at that time, the gondola was really famous as the main sacred object of the Great Encampment. So for that reason, there are many people who had their eyes peeled for it. And so it's difficult for us to say exactly what good or bad might have transpired. But there's one good stroke of good fortune that is that Siddha Panchen wrote in his autobiography. Is that when he was giving the 8th Shama Palchen Chukadrunup, the lay and precept vows, he gave them to an Tsurpa monastery in a quarters called the Kajema. So it's in the back room of that. And he said that there was a main subject of the Great Encampment of the image of our teacher made of the wood from the Bodhi tree with the features of Indian craftsmanship and made by the glorious protector Nagarjuna. So in the presence of that perfect sacred object, he says. So from that, we can see that at that time, uh, the uh, the sacred object of the great encampment, made by the Nagarjuna from the wood of the Bodhi tree, we can see that the gondola must have been there at that time. But at that time, they didn't describe it by the name gondola as they do before. Now, we can't say exactly why that was, but I think that they intentionally were secretive about the name. So they're secretive about it, I think. And that's what it seems to me. And also, during the time of the 15th Karmapa Kachab Dorje, there was a Katok Siddhi Chugi Jaso. He's one of the Katok Simpa Rinpoches. And he came and he visited Tsupa Rinpoche and he was shown around the entire monastery. And during that time, and during this, he described all of the sacred objects, and the second, third, and fourth seem to be connected to the gondola. The second one, what he describes is an image made from the wood of the Bodhi tree with Buddhas of the 3 times above and the 7 Buddhas below, and 2 wrathful deities. And this is offered by Durulabhadroja by acharyas who are emanations of the 4-armed Mahakala, he wrote. Now the third thing is the 12 deeds, a drawing of the 12 deeds made by Nagarjuna of Greed Naga clay. And the fourth one is also made by Nagarjuna. Sambhogakaya Jo, the crown. And beyond it, and Nagara, so these are the current day Nagara Indian Hindi letters, the Nagara script. And it said, wrote the mantra of interdependence. And he was sitting by the Bodhi tree, and on the right side there are 9 children of the gods, and the left side 9 children of the gods. So if I take this, as I said before, then if this is a basis, then there's the picture I showed you of the figure from Rumtek that I showed you the other day. It's probably the third item that he mentioned this in his account. But here we only have one picture, so it's difficult to say. We only have one picture, but there are 3 things mentioned. So if one day we can get to open the box of sacred objects that is kept in Rumtek Monastery, I think we will be able to identify which of the sacred objects are the sacred objects described by Katok Situ Rinpoche. Now, it is also very lucky, it says that unlike other Tibetan lamas and leaders, when the 16th Karmapa went to India, it was whether it was his clairvoyance or being able to see the future, he was able to bring many valuable sacred objects and historical artifacts along with him. And so we know from the catalogs prepared by the 16th Karmapa that after the Karmas arrived in the Sikkim, that these 3 artifacts were all able to be brought. The way we can know this is that there is a catalog of the articles of the sacred objects prepared after the 16th Karmapa arrived in Sikkim. And so that is enough to say about the gondola for now. Now, if I say too much, you all are going to get bored, and I'm just going to tire myself. But I do plan to continue researching this topic of the gondola in the future. And so that I hope that people with familiarity and knowledge of this matter can give me guidance and inspiration. So now I think if we take a break at this point, then I think we can come get together. When we come back, we will continue. La
Sawade litokadaju rechende dani bolembar